Afternoon. so yesterday I think that in my Zumba class was it's not like the first time that I felt like that I was going to faint, but this time it did happen. My dad was like, why did you stop? And I kind of did. Like when I felt that I was going to faint, I stopped and I was trying to reach a wall, but before I could reach it, I ended up falling, collapsing. So I fell down, and then we went to the hospital. We were there for like some 5 hours. And I had a CAT scan. They got my blood sample. What else? An electrocardiogram. I don't know if this is how to say that in English, but it's basically the one where they have like a little, things connected to you, and then they see your heartbeat. And as it turned out, like there's nothing, nothing stood out. It was all normal, somewhat normal. The only difference is that like I also had some saline solution, injected into my veins because because my blood pressure is already pretty low. Usually is about like 100 per over 70, something along those lines. And yeah, so I also I don't know if I hit my head or not. That is one of the points of contention because we don't really know. Because I lost consciousness, so I may have hit my head, but I didn't have any nausea or any headaches. What I did have was my thoughts were kind of scrambled, and I was struggling to reason. I was very much I was struggling to complete my sentences and to continue reasoning, to just think about things. And that is still a little bit like that, but it was like this before I fainted. During like the moment where I almost did one yesterday, I stopped the video because I was getting kind of like dizzy and all that. So it's been happening for a few weeks. We have concluded that it has to do with medication I've been taking, new medication I've been taking. But the thing is that medication has been really good for my head. I'm actually being stable and just in a good place mentally. So basically, and so I contacted my psychiatrist, and he basically said that I should continue taking the medication, and that I should just be under observation. So also resting more, that type of thing. But I'm going to continue the medication that has potentially made me faint. But we went to the hospital, we did all the exams, and turned out it's fine. If I have something, I have to go back, but I don't think I will. I will probably get fainty again in the near future, as I have been getting since I started taking this new medication. But just me being fainty doesn't mean that I'm going to faint. And then yesterday was just an unfortunate situation because. I didn't, there was no time between me starting to, look like I was going to faint and, me collapsing. So, but that's kind of like what happened yesterday. That's where I am at, physically. But it's also an interesting thing to think because medication has been really good for my head, but not so great for my body. But, it was better for me to, you have to make some choices, and the choice of making, my body, I'm putting my body second, but mentally, that is the number one priority, is that I'm mentally okay, and then that's been happening, and that's been kind of occurring, so there's that. But that's from about this, where I'm going to talk about that. I wanted to talk about something else. I want to talk specifically about a simple life. Why is that I'm saying this? It's just because this has been getting into my head lately, because I have the will to leave, and I plan on leaving, and I plan on keep going. So a lot of the accommodations I had made for myself, that were just me avoiding things. For example, now that I'm here for the long run, I have to kind of change that. But by doing that, I kind of it made me realize that there were some things that I kind of want to, I want to keep on doing things, certain things for my well-being, and I am planning on doing those things. And for example, staying away from the news, the news cycle, it can be very vicious, and it's not very constructive. truth be told, it's a lot of like, very sensationalized, informations, and like articles, and they usually doesn't really lead to anything good. Like I knowing certain pieces of information and not knowing them, it doesn't really change, the way I live or how, I think, how I vote and all that. I'm still going to be informed about things, but I want to reduce the amount of information I consume, because it's, as I said, there's nothing good comes out of like you being on top of everything. That's how I used to live my life. I used to be on top of everything, like every piece of information, that was coming from any direction, I was receiving it, and it just got me to be anxious and frustrated, because the world is a bad place, like no shit, like we all know that, and so like nothing that I watch is going to change the way that in the way that I perceive the world, because it is kind of like it is what it is. So basically, one of like the steps that I'll be taking, that I'm thinking of taking, is to reduce the amount of like information I consume, like, and try to stick with things that are they are like truly important, like truly relevant, that without them I won't really know about things. And honestly, like, so it's what constitutes a noteworthy piece of information. It changes, and it seems to be constantly changing. The more I distance myself from certain things, and it's working out so far so great. So that is kind of one of the things that I intend to do, to keep on doing, and that's pretty much what I mean by a simple life. Also, when I'm talking about information, I'm not just talking about the news. I'm talking about stuff that happens that is not, that it's like in the news but isn't necessarily like newsworthy. And I'm very, I decided that I'm going to separate. I'm not going back to social media, another thing. So I am going to reduce the amount of like content that I consume. And since I started doing this, like, I've been doing very well. It's been working out very well for me. So pretty much because I'm distant, I'm calling it just me living a simple life. Also, in terms of my aspirations and ambitions, I can have like as many ambitions as I like, and they can be as crazy as they want to, but I think in terms of like practical things that I'm doing on a daily basis, I want it to be simpler as well. I want like my momentary gratification, things that I consume, I want them to be I want to reduce, basically. As I was talking about before, I'm thinking more about my finances, so I want to be saving money. So I want to, I'm still going to have my little pleasures, my little luxuries, but I'm going to be more criteria with what I'm consuming. And also, I'm going to try not to look too much for things, because you look for things, you end up finding them, and then you want to consume them. So I'm going to keep kind of like a low profile in terms of like seeing the new things. If I see something, I see it. If I don't, I don't. This was something that you should kind of like give me some level of anxiety, because I wanted to know everything, to be like on top of everything. So like right now, I'm making the conscious choice of no longer receiving certain types of information. I don't want to, as I said, if I see it somewhere I go, then I'm gonna see it. But if I don't want to to force it, and I don't want, because I'm basically just going to be me consuming more than I need to consume, and more than is necessary. So that's another thing about simple life. So another element about my simple life that I'm going to like keep on pressing for is, it all has to do with like information one way or another. Like it can be talking about the news, can be talking about drama, can be talking about new snacks coming, and I want to separate myself from I lost my train of thought. But just like I have my interactions, I have the people I interact with, and that's that. Like this is not something that was ever like in contention necessarily, but it is something that I want to spend more time actually with those individuals, because if I find my time with like them, it is like less time that I'm like being either idle or just, for obsessing over some fantasy that I have. And I'm trying to be like as close to reality as possible. That's another thing about this existence that I'm like planning for myself in the future. I don't want to live in my fantasies. As I said, I can have as many dreams and as many aspirations and ambitions as I want, but like they have to be plans. It's not just fantasies. So I guess like this is another topic. I want to in the long run. I want to reduce my fantasies, and I'm gonna be doing that because I'm gonna be writing. So a lot of my fantasies. There's something that happened yesterday when I was at the hospital, waiting. I hate waiting, and I wasn't really enveloped in some of my fantasies. I was thinking about the novel, about like what I'm gonna put in the book, what how to fill in some blanks and all that stuff. So like that's pretty much what I need. I need my fantasies to be related to my novels instead of like to my life. I still am going to, I have come to accept many times, but then, I decided to no longer accept that, fantasies are always going to be there. They're always going to be, here. But, I think it's usually the degree to which they're occupying my time and occupying my mind. And I want to, I want to do what I can. So like, I'm okay with like the sad aspirations and ambitions, but not with fantasies. Like they can start as a fantasy, but they have to develop into something concrete, into like a plan, into something that is actionable. So there's that. But as I said, I want to spend more time not only with the people I interact with, but with the things that are actually meaningful in my life. So I want to be writing more. I want to be honestly, even like watching a TV show can be kind of I can consider that like living in the moment. Like there are certain things that I want to watch, and if I'm watching them, like it feels like it doesn't feel like a waste of time, particularly because like if you're sometimes like you're watching something that is quite excellent or like really good, it's kind of like a lecture that you're having, and you're learning how to tell better stories, because books, movies, TV shows, games, wherever you have them, like they're all about stories. Like you're telling a story, and usually there different mediums have different medium. Yeah, it's different medium, right? Have different conventions and different ways of going about things. But ultimately, like the fundamentals of like writing a good story is still kind of the same. So I can't even consider watching some stuff, which is something I've been kind of struggling with lately. It hasn't really been happening. I haven't really been watching things because I'm uninterested. Even stuff that is good that I know that I want to consume. Like it still is kind of, it's not just stuff that is like long and for example, The Sopranos, I'm like watching it, but it's like so many seasons and so many episodes per season, and I'm watching it on HBO Max that it doesn't fast forward. Like it doesn't. You can only watch it at like regular speed, and then that's killing me. So like there's stuff like that I'm struggling with, but there's also stuff that is like kind of like a movie that's kind of short that I haven't really been invested in, stuff that I have previously wanted to watch. I think this is not necessarily a bad thing, because if I'm watching too much, then I'm no longer in touch with reality and what's happening in my life. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise. But yeah, like I want to live more in the present. I think this is a part of like me living my simple life. Is like just being in the moment. So if that involves like me being interacting more with the people around me, then let's go with that. If it involves like me working more on my novel, let's go with that. If it involves like me going out and just having my moments, let's go with that. Although like simultaneously, if I want to go out, I'm trying to like save money. I'm trying to be more not reasonable, but more conscious of my finances, particularly because before it's not that I was being responsible, it's just that I wasn't really planning on keeping on living. So it's like, what's the point of saving and not indulging myself? And also like these little indulgences that I have, like they're part of it, but I'm going to be more criterious, as I said before. I'm going to be thinking a little bit more about what I'm consuming, and I'm going to be thinking more about like quality over quantity. So not so much consuming anything and everything that comes my way, but even if like it is cheap, because like one cheap thing from another different and something else that's also cheap, and then it starts to kind of like pile up, and like I want to make better choices. Not that the choices I was making before they weren't good. It's just that they were choices for like a different mindset, for a different person basically. So I'm trying to adjust what I had for. But I think that's it. This is pretty much what I meant when I'm talking about a simple life. I mean, there's more things, but like these are the ones that like they came to mind recently, and I'm thinking about them. But the gist of it, as I said, is that I want things to be simpler in my life. I don't have to overcomplicate things because life already offers lots of complications, so you don't have to make things more complicated than they have to be. You can just take it easy, basically. And it's honestly like a lot of things, they're going to continue to be the same, but it's just that my mindset before was that this was kind of like temporary things, either temporary because I was going to change them, or temporary because I wasn't going to be here for long. And like right now that I'm planning on like living, I have to start making slightly different choices, or if I'm making the same choices, I have to make them more consciously. I have to decide that that's what I'm doing instead of just going with the flow that I have established. So I think there's that for now. So anyways, bye.